All right, and we are live. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here today with Danielle Robin, who is a transformational relationship coach and my dear, dear friend here in New York City. Hi, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here.
I was really looking forward to having a conversation with you because I have not even spoken to you in such a long time, and I wanted to hear more about your practice, your work. And I obviously know how you got here, but I wanted to start by letting you tell our audiences, how did you get to be a transformational relationship coach?
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so wonderful to reconnect. And I will say that one of the joys of this work has been the fact that I work remotely and I get to travel the world and really work from everywhere and spread my message and work with clients all over the world. And as I know is something that you really hold dear to your heart as well. So that's been an absolute joy and a pleasure. So the way that I really came into this work was through knowing that that I always wanted to do something related to psychology, and in sort of throughout my 20s, really feeling that I was on my own personal exploration journey of what is relationship, and really experimenting with a lot of different formats for relationship, and going to events and really kind of interviewing people on what they were doing in their relationships that made it different, that kept it alive, and feeling that these two things were starting to come together. So I went really, really deep into education. I went back to school to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. And at the same time, I also discovered a teacher named Layla Martin, who I decided to basically learn with. I took her coaching certification, which I graduated from, and also now am a mentor for her and a co-teacher in some of her programs. So I really went deep into the education, and through it discovered that the coaching route, sort of to bring people into more conscious relationships, was one that I wanted to take. And I think that if I can really go back and think about what sparked me, what inspired me, it was when I heard this story and this message that generally the thing that we're supposed to sort of believe to be true about relationships is that after a really amazing sort of first couple of years or certain period of time, and sometimes it's called the honeymoon phase, sometimes it's called something else, that things get flatter and sex stops happening, and we generally just sort of move into this place that's not as exciting, and that we should just accept that. Like, that's the way things are. And there was such a strong part of me that wanted to explore how we could sort of like turn that on its head and really, really shift that notion so that people understand that actually that the good stuff is what happens after that initial phase. So that's really what sparked me, and my interest was, this deep feeling inside of me that that's just not true. And that just doesn't have to be true. And we don't have to just kind of, meet the society's expectation of what it thinks relationships should be, and we can really create our own destiny.
Yeah. So what does it mean to be in a conscious relationship?
Yeah.
Or partnership?
Yeah, thanks. So, I when I think about relationships, I think there are kind of, two mentalities. One of them is this stagnation mentality. It's this idea of like, cool, I've got you. You're locked in with me. You're never going to change, and I'm never going to change. And we're safe in this little box.
Yeah.
Right?
Here's an emotional prison, and now you're in it.
Yeah, exactly. I've captured you. We're here. We're not moving from here. And therefore, we are safe. That is the stagnation mentality. And that's exactly what I'm talking about that's actually the root of most issues in relationships, right? Then you have the growth mentality, which is we're evolving humans. We're in this dance together. We're in this ocean together. We're here to meet each other, to listen to each other, to have conversations about what we want to do. We're willing to accept the possibility that things will change. Our interests will change. Our love will feel different at different times, and that's safe. That's the safety. In the stagnation mentality, you find yourself saying things like, well, we're just not the kind of couple who does that, which is not a thing, right? You know, everyone is the type of person who does everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But do you think that some people are more open to explorations than others?
I do. And I think that this is, it's really comes from that conditioning, right? If we really dig into it, you know, what's blocking you from being open to energy moving, to emotions being full, to essentially the full spectrum experience of emotion that is relationship, that is partnership. You know, I do think that there's a lot that can be traced back to our early conditioning and our childhood and messages that we received. You know, wherever we are in the world, the messages about shame come in really strong from a young age. The messages about us being too much or not enough, or what we see in our parents' relationship. Usually, I'm going to just generalize that that's sort of typically been more in the stagnation category. That's kind of what most people have gone for. So that's what we've learned. So I think that that has a huge role in whether or not we are open to, you know, the full spectrum experience of being in a relationship, everything that entails.
What do you think people are most afraid of?
I think people are most afraid of, so I think that there's sort of a primal panic around abandonment that a lot of people have. And I think that a lot of people fear that if they open themselves up to trying things, if they allow themselves to fully express themselves, that their partner will leave, or that something will happen and they'll want to leave. So it's sort of this primal panic on both ends that we have to stay in the thing. And what is so healing for people to start to realize is that actually by opening up, by being more vulnerable, by saying yes to new things, to different things, by choosing to grow together, you actually find yourself, it's the opposite effect. You find yourself wanting to stay more because you grow even closer, you form a deeper connection and a deeper bond. When we don't do that, things start to bubble up. And then you've got the fear and the tension rising, and it's just a recipe for something really challenging.
Yeah. So when we're referring to new things, are they sexual things, or are we talking about activities? Like what are new things one could try in a conscious relationship?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, a lot of people come to me wanting to talk about sex. Sex is a big topic and people just want to focus on sex. So yes, there are sexual things that we can work on. So I'll give some examples. You know, there's an exercise that I have couples do around exploring an edge. Exploring an edge, you know, really getting clear on where their edges are, what they're willing and interested in possibly exploring together. Because let me tell you, they're not talking about it on a regular basis. Couples are not talking about sex enough. So sharing desires is really exciting. And guess what? Often they match up. You just didn't know because you weren't talking about it. So really taking someone through that process around clarity of, well, what do you actually want to try? What do you actually want to do? And then giving them sort of a date night to explore an edge together can be really fun. Or, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious. Are there specific things that most people want and never talk about? Is there theme, is there a trend?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting actually, because I think most people are either really curious about sort of the tantric side of sex, the more spiritual side of sex that they're sort of hearing about and reading about. How do we introduce breath work into sex? What does this even mean? How do I get into my sexual energy body? And on the other side of totally the same coin is sort of the more BDSM play side that people are also interested in, which actually they have a lot of similar qualities. And what I often will tell couples to start with is active giving and receiving as a really, really beautiful, a beautiful practice to create a space where they're asking each other what they want, you know, actually asking for what they want and then getting it can be really healing. Often, and this also relates to having a voice in relationships. Often we're not speaking up about many things. So being given the chance to say, you know what? I really just love a foot massage for 5 minutes. And I know that I don't have to do anything or think about anything is so, so connecting and healing. So the conscious exercises can be done on an overtly sexual level, and they can be done on a more connection and intimacy level. And they can be done on a much simpler level, like even just creating a practice for catching up can be wildly effective and really transformational and exquisite for couples.
Tell me more about this. Why is it so important to have a practice of catching up?
Yeah, because if you think about how we catch up, it's like I'll ask, how are you? And you'll respond, fine. And then I'll say, like, how was your day? And you'll say, good. And the questions we're asking are actually leaving no opportunity for full connection. We are taught to ask really flat questions, and we're taught to respond in a really flat way. And we're keeping all the emotions like here, no highs, no lows. How was your day? Good. Right?
Right.
And
yes.
So it's such an opportunity to open into more sharing. And this is one of the things I actually talk about. People want to talk about sex. Sex does not exist in a little box. Like, people think that like we're just going to improve sex and then it's going to get better. There's actually so many things that go into great sex. Like, you can't have great sex, the best sex of your life, without having the best intimacy of your life and the best connection of your life and the best communication of your life. So why not start with catching up?
Communication.
Yeah.
It's really about what are 3 really good questions you can ask instead of how's your day?
Yeah, that's actually so perfect, because the practice I most recommend for people, and when I say practice, I know that feels like a little intimidating. Okay, so the questions I recommend for people are to ask your partner, what are you celebrating? And allow them to list everything they're celebrating, and just listen while they say, I'm celebrating that, I did really good at this presentation today, and I'm celebrating that I had a great call with my brother today. I'm celebrating that I booked us that vacation. And then the next question, what are you clearing? So then they get to clear everything that's sort of like, there's this tension in my chest because, I know I've got to call my mom, and I'm feeling anxious about, getting up early tomorrow, whatever it is. And then the third question, what do you desire? So all of their wishes and hopes and things that they want to call into their life. And asking those 3 questions really gives you a very, very full sense of what's going on with a person. And it gives them the sense that they have a space to share and to go deeper than fine and good, right?
So what do you do if you're in a relationship and you would really like to improve upon the communication or perhaps your sex life, and you're afraid that your partner isn't open to it?
Oh, that's really tough. So I think the first thing that I would say is getting clarity on what's going on with your partner. Like, what does it mean to them that they're not open to it? What's coming up for them? Because a lot of times what you'll find is in relationships, there's sort of a common dynamic. One person is sort of the pusher of activities. The other one is a little bit more shy about activities. And you can call it, if you're, familiar with like attachment theory language, the anxious avoidant, or the, that, so whatever it is that's in that category. And more often than not, there's one partner who's sort of coming towards and one partner who's sort of moving away. And that's really common, because what's happening is it's this vicious cycle where as the person comes towards, the other person runs further away, which triggers the towards person to come even further, right, and triggers the person moving away to move away even faster. So it's this really vicious cycle. So you've got to recognize that. And not that, obviously I'm a little biased here, but it does help to have a third party person holding the conversation. Because if you've already got that dynamic established, it's going to be really challenging to get anywhere if one person is becoming a little defensive or a little fearful. Because usually what's behind that fear and that defensiveness is fear that they're not going to match up, fear that they're not going to do it right, fear that they're going to fail their partner. It's usually a lot of softer emotions under that initial, like, I don't want to. There's maybe some sadness or some fear, some shame that, like, you know, they're not sure that they can perform up to the first partner's, you know, desires. So it can be really helpful to have somebody sort of create a space to kind of have both people witness what's really going on so that they can sort of soften around it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I see that a lot in my practice because I work on professional development and personal development. And as we're making strides and creating forward momentum, a lot of times it creates a tension in their relationship because one feels left behind.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense, obviously.
Totally.
So it shows up quite a bit to see, let's pause long enough and check in with them to see where they're at and what we can provide for them to grow along with us.
So many similarities between those dynamics that you see in those relationships.
Yeah. Well, one person was invested in growth and the other one kind of didn't get the memo. It happens. So what are your views on monogamy?
Yeah. Beautiful. So I feel like both the word monogamy and polyamory have gotten extremely bad raps, and I wish that we could just disappear both of them and create this big ocean that people could just swim in.
Right.
You know, it feels very polarizing that a lot of the conversation, like the internet really loves to pit monogamy and polyamory against each other and make it like the great debate. And what I think that the issue with polyamory as it's sort of being spoken about now is that monogamy is that monogamy can be such a beautiful, juicy, pleasurable way to be in relationship. It's just the way that we are often doing monogamy doesn't allow for that. It's totally possible to be monogamous, and also that we have to be open to the fact that these words can mean different things for different people now. My monogamy might look different than your monogamy. You know, the idea of flirtation, the idea of talking about attraction to other people, all of those things might be okay in my relationship, and I might still consider it monogamous, but to someone else that might not be okay. So what I sort of try to explain to couples who are looking to place themselves a little bit more on a spectrum is to not think about any of these words, but to really think about what they want to create for themselves. It's not monogamy and polyamory. It's actually like an infinite number of possibilities in between, and we get to create whatever we want. And that's actually a really fun conversation to have. What I see a lot is couples coming in all freaked out because they've decided they want to explore non-monogamy, but they think it means they have to have sex with other people.
Right.
To which I'm like, okay, so that's your 100. What's your 2?
Right.
Let's start there.
Right. What would be a good 2?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a good 2 would be something like, maybe this isn't a 2, maybe this is more like a 10, but
okay.
I think, okay, so I mean, I'm trying to
10.
2 for me. A good 10 would be talking about attraction to other people.
Yeah.
Decriminalizing attraction in your relationship. Feeling that it's safe to be attracted to other people, and not just that you can actually find closeness in seeing your partner as a friend who you can share that with and talk about that with. You know, who are you attracted to and why, and what qualities are you attracted to? Attraction not just being about appearances, it being about energy, it being about the type of people you want to draw. I mean, we all know what that feels like, and it's not just about looks that draw to other people. Okay. And then there's another one that I think is kind of interesting, which is I think that it's really interesting to talk more about sex with other couples and other people, which is something that we're putting on a really shiny view of our sex life and our relationships often, but to actually sit down and like come up with a list of questions and answer them honestly is definitely in the like 2 to 10 category of, you know, how many times a week are your friends having sex? What kinds of things are they doing? What are they exploring in their relationships? And also talking about what you're doing together can be a really fun way to dip out of that sort of strict, we're in a box with ourselves space, start having the conversation with other friends and creating openness in that way too.
How do you set the tone for this? Because sometimes when you are in groups of somewhat newer friends, perhaps, or even long-term friends, that could, how do you set the tone for an intimate conversation that doesn't end up being this high school version of, truth or dare, right? Like how do you set the tone for something to be an honest, vulnerable conversation of what does your sex life really look like and how does it feel?
Yeah. So I would say you definitely want to start small. It's not a conversation to sort of propose in a group of 10 people, but if you find yourself on a double date where it feels like it's really a beautiful sort of connection and it feels like a safe space, you can, I'd say, one, get consent always from people to have these conversations and say, but then also be the one to share first and model the vulnerable sharing, to say, hey, we've really been going through something challenging in our relationship. Would it be okay if we shared openly about that? This feels like a safe space to do it. And if you feel inclined to share your experience, like, we'd love to hear it, and we'd hold that very confidential and very safe as well. We've found that it can be really healing to do this, and they'll find that too in like an instant, because it is so deeply healing. And it's one of the things that I am also kind of on a soapbox about right now, which is just normalizing the shit out of what goes on in relationship. Like, I feel that the media has done a really, really rough thing for us in sort of painting a picture that a relationship is actually like the first year of a relationship, when you are falling in love with someone. That's all we really see in the movies or, in shows. And we rarely ever see sort of the full spectrum of intimacy. So people kind of have that in their mind, and normalizing that everything that's happening in your relationship is totally normal, okay, and it's happening all over the world to everyone else is
Right.
Revolutionary for people. It really is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for sharing all of your so valuable insights. It was a real pleasure listening to you. If people are curious, you are all over the world. You're probably going to be in Europe again soon. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, beautiful. So, through my website is a great way, DanielleRobin.com. And I really love sharing my thoughts on relationships on Instagram. I think it's a great way. That's sort of how I share my daily stories about what's going on with me. And it's a great place that I love to connect with people. So those are great places to reach me. And yeah, I'm excited to keep traveling and keep meeting people around the world who are interested in learning more about this topic, because I love sharing about it and talking about it.
And this is the right audience, right? We're also going to make sure we're going to place the links below this podcast so you can click directly to her Instagram and her website. And thank you guys so much for listening. And we will talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you so much. Bye.